Lombardi, and I am the Associate Director for the Creative Affairs Office here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to the Care for Creatives Community Conversation Series on mental health. Care for Creatives is a partnership between the D.C. Creative Affairs Office and the George Washington University, which provides pay-what-you-can mental health support to any creative and entrepreneur in the D.C. area who needs it. You can find more information about Care for Creatives and how to receive care on our website at creativeaffairsdc.com. So welcome, everybody. We're here to have a conversation on cannabis and mental health, and I'm super excited for you to meet our guests today. So welcome, Chef Jazz and Dr. Mary DeRaedt. How are you doing today?
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Well, Chef Jazz, can we start with you? I would love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Chef Jazz. In the industry, I'm the founder of Green Panther Chef. We're a full-service cannabis catering company, and we started in 2017. So we're known for doing a lot of parties and private events and things of that nature. But more importantly, my relationship with cannabis actually started back in 2006. I'm a Crohn survivor, and so I use it as a lever for health and happiness as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Dr. DeRaedt, can you explain a little bit about the work that you do with GW?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Mary DeRaedt, and I am the director of the school counseling program at George Washington University. I am an assistant professor in the counseling department, and I teach classes in topics like trauma recovery, human sexuality, family counseling, and counseling theories and techniques. So I kind of teach a broad spectrum of classes for the counseling department. I also have a private practice where I see clients, and I have been a therapist working in different venues for the last about 18 years. So I have a long clinical experience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Chef Jazz, as a cannabis educator, I thought it might be helpful to start this conversation if you could help define some terms for us. There's so many terms out there, from, well, cannabis to cannabinoid, THC, CBD, hemp, what's that? Terpene. I don't know what these terms are, but I would love for you to help us understand them.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the fundamentals. You know, a lot of people can get like tripped up on the use of cannabis and even using it. But once we really break down what it means, you know, into layman's terms, people find it a little bit more approachable, can cozy up to the idea, right? So cannabinoids, we hear that term thrown around a lot, but they're actually found, there's two ways we can look at it. They're chemical compounds that are found outside in nature, and then are also found inside of our body in our endocannabinoid system, hence the root word endo, right? And then also phytocannabinoids as well. Those are found outside in nature. So like in pines and lemon, rosemary, those beautiful things that you smell just in nature, those actually are like phytocannabinoids as well, that you can find outside in nature. Essentially, the endocannabinoids and the phytocannabinoids, they actually marry inside of our endocannabinoid system. We typically say ECS because it can be a mouthful, but the ECS system is just like a similar system to our immune system or our circulatory system. It's kind of understudied, but it basically provides homeostasis in our body through interacting with these phytocannabinoids, our endocannabinoids, and it all works within our endocannabinoid system through receptors that are called CB1 or CB2 receptors that are located in our gut and also inside of our central nervous system to provide homeostasis. So I hope I didn't like bog down too much, but I hope that was a simple way to put that.
Yeah. So can you help us understand what the difference between like hemp is and also what THC is in difference from CBD and how all that stuff comes together?
Yeah. So definitely THC, that's the common one. A lot of people is known for its psychoactive effects. That is a cannabinoid as well. That is found in cannabis typically. And then also the cousin of cannabis is called hemp. And that's where you typically find CBD. That is a non-intoxicating cannabinoid. A lot of people say you find that a lot for pain management, anti-inflammatory, and like people like it because it does not have psychoactive effects typically.
Okay, that's super helpful. So you mentioned your experience with cannabis having to be health related. And so I'm wondering if you could explain the different ways that you can utilize cannabis for health and well-being.
Oh, definitely. So a lot of people are very familiar with oral or inhaling, of course, or smoking, of course. But edibles, that's another one. I actually, when I first got introduced to cannabis, I actually did it raw. I did not decarboxylate, meaning I did not activate it inside of the oven. So I was utilizing those acidic benefits. So utilizing the THCA essentially, because it's a powerful anti-inflammatory. And so I would utilize that by literally juicing it with a juice called ABC, which is apple, beet, and carrot. And then I would add an extra C with cannabis. And I would drink that every single morning. It provided great anti-inflammatory benefits, but a lot of people think you always have to smoke it. You always have to cook it. But the plant itself in raw form has great benefits as well on its own.
So what is the difference between what you do as a cannabis chef and then what people understand as edibles?
Yeah,
creating edibles. Yeah.
so like edibles, I look at it like it falls all under this umbrella term. I always look at it like that. But edibles are more like single dose. With myself, we're really doing more culinary arts and cuisine. So we're pairing that, and we can do meal plans as well. We work with the aging population. And so a lot of people do want to know how to eat for health and happiness and just not like completely change their lifestyle. So we would definitely just introduce like different recipes that they can use and different methods as well. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You know, I'm curious, Dr. Mary, about how cannabis is deployed more from a mental health and medical perspective and what your experience in working with it has been.
Yeah, so first I'd just like to say that I'm excited to hear everything that Chef Jazz has been saying, because I really like this idea of taking cannabis out of just this like drug level and taking it more into an idea of a wholeness, like a holistic approach to health and reduction of inflammatory in your body and things like that. Because I think what has been happening in my field is that it has in the past kind of been treated, you could get like a medical card and treat it almost like a medication for things like anxiety and depression and other mental health issues, but it's now kind of becoming more commonplace for people to just use it on a regular basis to keep themselves kind of stable and balanced and healthy. And so there's been a little bit of a shift, but I still think there is more of a medical approach to it in my field. So that's kind of where we're at now. And I don't want to speak for every counselor, but it is something that in my practice, I have worked with multiple clients over the years. I started out working many, many years ago in a substance abuse program where I was working with people who were referred for cannabis use. And they would often say, this just keeps me stable. And I didn't understand it at the time, but now that I've worked with a lot of people one-on-one who use cannabis on a regular basis to just reduce their daily anxiety and feel more engaged in their life. And for medical issues, as Chef Jazz was pointing out, with Crohn's disease and other medical problems, that it just helps them to kind of engage more effectively. And so I'm really excited about kind of a shift in our understanding of it.
Where is research on this, right? Like as a relatively, cannabis isn't new, but sort of maybe the comfort level of its use from a medical perspective. Where is research? Is it, is there a lot of research on this?
So I can answer that and just say that there's actually a lot more than at first I thought there was. I have been looking into it over the last year or so, and recently found actually a study that was a compilation by the health community of all the research that has been done and all the outcomes for different disorders and things like that. And there is not a lot in terms of compared to things like heart disease or other medications, but there is actually a solid foundation for the medical use of cannabis to relieve pain, to deal with issues like Crohn's disease and epilepsy and different disorders like that. There is also some evidence to say that for some specific people, the THC can kind of spark psychotic episodes. And so it is good to be careful and be very intentional about how you use it when you first use it, to not use a lot, because we can't be sure. But so that connection is there, but it's very specific. But generally speaking, we are starting to get a much more solid foundation in research to support its use in our broader community.
I'm curious from both of your perspectives, what it is we do know and what it is we don't know about cannabis, right? Like, it sounds like that's really great that the research is starting to fill in some of the gaps, but I wonder, in your experience, what is it that you're discovering that you do know, but then you also don't know about its use in both of your areas of expertise?
One thing I will talk about is the FDA and the relationship with food and cannabis. And so how does that actually work inside of your body? I have a lot of anecdotal evidence and research just with myself no longer being on medication for 13 years. But then you also have the FDA, who are still very apprehensive about how does this actually work. So we have to have a lot more study and research around cannabis and food and that relationship.
Well, I would say that from my field, what I can say I know from anecdotal evidence is that there are more people that are helped by having access to cannabis products than there are people who are injured in some way by it. And to say that there, things like alcohol, we have rules for alcohol in our culture, right? We have expectations and we have laws around its use and when we can use it and can't use it. But then it's just out there for everyone to use. And some people have issues with it and become addicted. But the vast majority of people are able to just use it and use it socially and engage in it in a way. And it has even worse side effects and problems than cannabis does. So what I have seen in my field is that the research is catching up to what I feel like we already know, which is that the use of cannabis can be very helpful for mental health. It can be useful for self-care. It can kind of expand people's repertoire of things to relax and engage in their life with. And it can be used without addiction. It can be used without a lot of negative side effects. So I think that was what we do know. What we don't know is exactly how to place it in our communities, right? Because it is both recreational and can also be medicinal. And so I am kind of sitting in, how do we kind of put those two things together? Whereas, you take a medicine for your heart, the doctor prescribes that and you only use it for that specific purpose. Whereas you drink alcohol for recreation, and cannabis is both of those two things. So how do we make a space in our culture for something that fits both of those two categories at the same time and educate people about it? I think that's the part that I'm still kind of wondering about.
I'm wondering if both of you could talk a little bit about where intention plays into how cannabis is used, for on the medical side as well as on the health and wellness side.
Yeah, definitely. For my intention, that's a really big one. Myself having Crohn's disease, I have to be very intentional about the cultivars that I choose, and then also the dose as well. And then I also do dabble in a recreational space by doing parties and everything like that. So just to kind of break off for a moment, I was with a client who wanted to do a party, and they wanted to go up to 300 milligrams per person, which is way too high, And so it really is putting in the balance of what is the intention for your party. Are you trying to get completely blasted, or do you just really want to have a good time? And so it was we want to have a good time. And so understanding your numbers is extremely important. That one, knowing when to dose, knowing that if you do not feel it in the next 10 minutes or 30 minutes, give yourself an hour and a half, because it has to work through your body. So just knowing how you want to feel and then backing into it. And everything does not work for everyone else. Like 100 milligrams, I can take no problem, but that might put some people on their behind. So you just have to know where you want to go with it and how do you want to use it? What's the result that you want to get out of this?
Yeah. No, I would just echo a little bit of what Chef Jazz just said, because in my field, I think that what when it comes to intention, what I look at when I start talking to a client about using cannabis is, how are they using it? Are they using it to avoid? Are they using it to escape? Are they using it to kind of in a way that doesn't allow them to engage effectively in their life? I've talked before on some of these about like functionality, and that being the difference between something being useful and something being a problem. And I think that when my clients are coming in and saying, I'm doing this 24/7, I'm very high all day long, I don't remember some of the stuff that happened today, I might say, okay, well, let's talk about your intentional use. Let's talk about how you're using it and what the effect is, and how we can be a little bit more contained about how you are, and putting boundaries around how you're using this. But so I think whenever I talk to a client about cannabis use, we always discuss, like, what do you hope the outcome is? What is the goal here? Kind of exactly like what Chef Jazz was saying, like, what do you want to experience? And then how do we then provide education on what amounts and things like that, which I bow to Chef Jazz on that, because I am not an expert in dosage. But I think that that's an area where we're lacking, right? We don't have a lot of people out there who are able to provide education, because there's so many boundaries around it still. There's not a lot of people out there that can provide you with the education. So people like Chef Jazz are so important right now to give people those boundaries and to show them what's going to be useful, and to actually expand their mind about all the different options that they can use it for.
You know, I'm curious about how age fits into this. I know, Chef Jazz, you mentioned you work with the elderly population a lot. Is that true?
Yeah, I do. So it's double-sided. So a lot of people, they come to me with like symptoms, insomnia, they have like depression, migraines. A lot of people come to me for that. And they are the aging population, a little bit over their 50s. And they come to me, it's their first time kind of in a dispensary. They're like, I don't know what to do with this as soon as I go home. And they're not really, they don't want to smoke. They know that they do not want to smoke, but they want to know, how do I get it from this package into my food and create repeatable results? And so that's the population I'm dealing with. But then on the party side, I also have a different population as well. So, but I love teaching my classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I follow up a question for Chef Jazz on that? I'm curious if when you do education, or for the people listening today, you could talk about the difference between smoking pot and the outcomes and using edibles. Mm-hmm. In my experience, they're very different.
Yes. Yeah, they're totally different. I mean, one, it lasts a lot longer when you are consuming it. When you're inhaling, you're decarbing and everything all in one session here, and it doesn't last as long. So with edibles, it's a great way to create repeatable results. As long as you know those numbers, you don't find yourself having to consume as much throughout the day. And you can just, once you know it, you can set it and forget it. And I always tell people to take a tolerance break as well. When you feel that you are consuming just a little bit too much, or you're being a recluse, or you're not, it's supposed to stimulate you, make you happy and get out there. But if you're feeling like it's a complete opposite, take a break. And then revisit and go low and slow when you reintroduce.
Yeah, low and slow.
Low and slow. How about youth, young people? Where do young people fit into this conversation? Dr. Mary, do you have some insight into that?
Yeah. So actually, one of the important things to know about being an adolescent is that your brain isn't done growing. And so people when they're in their adolescence, people want to use it, right? That's a time when you're like, oh, I want to experiment with a lot of things. But unfortunately, there has been some research to show that use in your adolescence, while your brain is still forming and moving and changing and hormones are shifting, it's not really a good time. It can have a detrimental effect on attention span, on academic outcomes, things like that. So, and memory, attention span, academic outcomes, and memory are three areas where for adolescents, it can dull their senses and have longer term effects. Generally speaking, because people ask me this a lot, like, when do you move out of adolescence? Technically, it's not till you're about 25, but development is a very wide spectrum. So it's anywhere from 20 to 25 when people should maybe start using cannabis. So I think it is important to be cautious when people are younger and just be thoughtful about how it's being used. Although being an adolescent, being thoughtful is not necessarily their key skill. But maybe they will hear this and just take a beat.
That's great advice. It seems like there's been a shift in perspective around the use of cannabis from a health perspective as well as a medical perspective. And I'm wondering, is that true, right? Is it true that there has been a shift? And if so, how far have we come?
Oh, definitely. It has been a big shift. I would say about for the past 10 years. So I started using cannabis in 2006, 2007, and so it was not as accepted then. I really had to be a closet user, and now with this legalization, Colorado, and how people really view it, now it's a cool thing. They're like, oh my God, you're in the cannabis industry. And it's not, so we can definitely have more conversations now, which are really great, but we still have a long way to go. I always say that.
I would agree. In my field, a similar process has happened. And just for context, when I got my master's degree back in 2005, I was being taught it's addictive. We need to get everybody off of it. It's illegal. We shouldn't be using it. People are going to tell you it's not addictive, but it is. And, from that paradigm until now, where when we educate students, we talk about its values and its qualities that help people with some mental illnesses. And, we approach it from a much broader perspective. And so I think to Chef Jaz's point, in the last 10 years, that has been kind of exponential. It was very similar for about the first 10 years of my career. And in the last 10 years, it has just completely shifted. Even to the point where I've talked to therapists who are older than me, who 5 years ago were saying, oh, pot's bad. And now are more like, oh, okay, that's an interesting thing. We should all be exploring it. So I think that there is definitely been a shift. I don't think we've come as far as we need to go. I think we have some areas where people still are kind of digging in, and there is definitely aspects of pot use that are still being considered kind of drug use and things like that. So I think we have a space to go, but we've definitely come a long way.
So we've talked a lot about the positive impacts from a health and wellness as well as a mental health perspective. I'm curious, what happens when it's not going well?
Yeah, I think that one of the things we want to keep in mind is that for some people, cannabis can be something that they become that becomes a habit for them, and it can have a negative impact on their life. And so I think I just want to, say that if that is you, and if you feel like you are unable to kind of manage your cannabis use, that there are lots of places out there that will help you to manage that, and that it is not something to be ashamed of. It is just something to be provided support for. So because it can, for some people, it can become habit forming.
So you have a book, Chef Jaz, is that true, coming out?
Yes, I am so excited. My face lights up every time I talk about it. It's been about 2 years in the making. It's called the More Than Cannabis Cookbook. Yes, and so it has like over 100 recipes in there. I have cook-offs, like tips, tricks, everything for like the novice canna cook. I love it.
So how can we support you with the work that you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much. First off, visit greenpantherchef.com, subscribe to our mailing list, and you will just be up to date with all of the wonderful things. We have a book launch party that's coming up next month where we're doing actually not the book launch, the cover reveal. And then we're just going to roll into our book launch. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, thank you for letting us know about it. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to help us unpack this subject a little bit and learn more about cannabis and its use for health and wellness and in mental health. So thank you both for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thanks.